If you talk about the biggest reasons an NBA career falls apart, injuries are always number one. Right after that, it's usually some off-court drama that kills their reputation. But how often do you actually see a player's whole career get wrecked because of a single teammate, the same guy who's supposed to have their back and make them better? In this video, we're breaking down 5 NBA players whose careers got completely destroyed by a teammate.
With the event yesterday, with the video leaking, huge embarrassment that comes with that.
Kwame Brown. The 2001 NBA draft was unforgettable. When Kwame Brown was picked number 1 overall, he became the first high school player in history to ever be drafted at the top spot. And who made that choice? None other than Michael Jordan. At the time, Jordan was running the Washington Wizards and believed Kwame could be the future face of the franchise. But MJ wasn't impressed with Kwame's weak performances. People even wondered if Jordan thought, should I just come back and play myself? Because at least I love the game? A few months later, Jordan did exactly that, announcing his NBA return, fueled by his ego and desire to prove he could still dominate while mentoring the young players, especially Kwame. An opportunity to mentor young Kwame. Jordan believed his ceiling was sky high and that he could eventually take over the league. At first, MJ thought he could push Kwame to reach his full potential, at least according to one Wizards staff member. Quote, when he got to camp, it was like Kwame already had the credentials in Michael's eyes to be part of his inner circle. So, Michael let him in, at least for a while. While the world was hyped for Jordan's comeback, all eyes were on him. But behind the scenes, his relationship with the new number 1 pick was rocky from the jump. Reports say Jordan said plenty of negative things about Kwame, crossing the line more than once. He made it personal, though it wasn't completely unprovoked. In an old ESPN piece by Michael Leahy, he wrote that Kwame was cocky, even trash-talking Jordan and questioning if he could still play at an elite level. Something MJ didn't take lightly. Jordan came back expecting a driven, hard-working big man ready to grow into a star. Instead, he saw a lazy, disrespectful, paycheck-chasing bust. To make matters worse, Jordan even started clowning Kwame for his unusually small hands. Michael throws it to Kwame, only for it to bounce right off his hands. In Jordan's mind, it finally made sense why Kwame was so terrible at catching passes. He wasn't just clumsy. He literally couldn't palm the ball, which is flat-out embarrassing for a 7-footer. Of course, MJ roasted him for it non-stop. Sure, Kwame lacked the work ethic to succeed, but honestly, this was the absolute worst environment he could have been drafted into. His confidence was chipped away every single day, and number 19-year-old kid could survive that kind of mental beatdown. Predictably, Kwame never developed the way the Wizards hoped. No shock there. A few years later, he got shipped off to the Lakers. But instead of dealing with Jordan, now he had Kobe, who might have been just as demanding, if not worse. Kobe had the same ruthless mindset as MJ, and for Kwame, it was like living the same nightmare twice. Over time, he lost interest in the game, feeling like he was being blamed for everything, even though he was still just trying to figure out who he was as a person. There's no doubt, Michael was definitely too harsh with the way he treated him. And even with all of Kwame's flaws, you could argue he was doomed to fail right from the start. Still, he lasted a whole decade in the league, which isn't bad at all for someone labeled one of the biggest busts ever. Now on to Javaris Crittenton. Funny enough, another former Wizards player. In one of the wildest locker room incidents ever, Gilbert Arenas pulled out a gun, aimed at none other than Crittenton. Arenas himself admitted he was purposely trying to piss Javaris off, saying, "That's just what I do." You could see him steaming. But when people look back at it, the story is almost always told from Arenas' side. He was the face of the Wizards, got suspended, eventually traded, but he had already racked up millions and a solid career. Truth is, Arenas was the one in the wrong, but he still got another shot with the Wizards after his suspension. Crittenton never got that chance. His NBA career was dead before it ever really started. By 21 years old, he was already done. What went down was that he actually brought a loaded gun into the locker room. And unlike Arenas, Crittenton was immediately cut by the Wizards and never played in the NBA again. Keep in mind, he was a first-round draft pick and only in his 2nd season. Yet, in an instant, that single locker room moment destroyed his career. Sure, you could put all the blame on Crittenton. After all, he was the one who carried a loaded weapon into the team's facility, right? But anyone who knows Gilbert Arenas knows he was a professional instigator, and back then, he was even worse. The whole mess started from a card game on the team plane that involved money. Arenas kept provoking everyone, even jokingly telling Crittenton he'd burn him alive if he didn't pay up. Javaris snapped back, threatening to shoot him. Arenas, being his reckless self, decided to call the bluff, bringing multiple guns into the locker room and mocking Crittenton by telling him to pick one. That's when Javaris pulled out his own loaded gun. In an interview later, this was how he defended himself. Quote, "They said, don't get caught up in Gilbert Arenas' antics. But he was making death threats against me. You keep talking about fighting, I play with guns." That one locker room disaster became forever tied to Javaris Crittenton's name, and he got blackballed from the league because of it. No team wanted to risk signing a guy with that kind of baggage, so he never got another shot. Just a year later, he was charged with murder, proving those teams may have been right to stay away. Now let's talk about Nikola Mirotic. On October 17, 2017, what looked like a normal Chicago Bulls practice turned into absolute chaos. Things heated up when an argument broke out between Mirotic and Bobby Portis. Reports say they threw punches, but Mirotic got it the worst. Portis clocked him in the face so hard that he suffered a concussion and multiple facial fractures, landing him in the hospital. For Portis, the Bulls hit him with an 8-game suspension, and his reputation instantly tanked. He was branded as a hothead and a locker room menace. But for Mirotic, that single punch basically changed his career forever. He had been a key role player for Chicago and was actually leading the team in scoring early that season. But after this, the Bulls' locker room was shattered beyond repair. Mirotic ended up missing the first month and a half of the season, with a fractured face, and the tension it created inside the organization eventually forced the Bulls to trade him. This wasn't part of their plan at all, considering they had literally just re-signed Mirotic to an extension that summer. He was leading the team in scoring when the Bulls dumped him at the deadline. Mirotic went to the Pelicans, and just a year later, at only 28 years old, he shocked the league by leaving the NBA to play for Barcelona. And notice, I didn't say he washed out of the league because he didn't. He was still good enough to get plenty of offers from NBA teams, including contenders who wanted him badly. But instead, he chose Europe. His reasons were personal. He wanted to be close to family, and he never felt like America was truly home. While he eventually squashed the beef with Portis and accepted his apology, that ugly incident definitely pushed him toward leaving the NBA for good. When asked about the decision, Mirotic put it simply, "If I don't enjoy it, if I don't feel that emotion and desire to improve every day, then the money doesn't matter. If I don't wake up wanting to practice, it's not worth it." While he never outright blamed Portis, it was clear Mirotic didn't enjoy NBA life anymore after that punch. Maybe he would have gone back to Europe eventually, but that incident definitely sped up the decision. Now let's move to Jordan Poole. "I was wrong for my actions that took place on Wednesday. I've apologized to my team, I've Apollo. Out they didn't. So let's rewind." Before getting rocked by Draymond, Jordan Poole's NBA rise was insane. As a rookie, he was easily one of the worst players in the league. But by year 3, he had transformed into the Warriors' second or third best guy during their championship run. And remember, he was just 22 when Golden State won the 2022 title. At that point, he looked like the future cornerstone of the franchise. But all of that flipped fast. After a messy season where the Warriors underachieved, Poole got dumped in the offseason. And honestly, the trade was ugly. Golden State shipped him out for Chris Paul, who was already a shell of himself and left after just 1 year. They didn't even get real value back. In fact, the Warriors had to throw in a first-round pick just to unload Poole. That says everything. They weren't trying to build with him, they just wanted him gone at all costs. Poole went from rising star and supposed future of the dynasty to the tank commander for the Wizards, racking up the emptiest stats possible on one of the league's worst franchises. And all of it traces back to that punch from Draymond Green. Vernon Maxwell. What do you know about Vernon Maxwell? Well, back in the 90s, he was a key piece of the Houston Rockets, a starting shooting guard, the glue guy who brought all the little things that turned them into legit contenders. Back out to Vernon. Vernon launches a 3. Yes, Maxwell knocks it down. In 1994, he played a major role in helping Houston capture their first championship in franchise history. But when it came time to defend that title, the Rockets were hit hard with injuries, which crushed their chances of repeating. Out of desperation, the front office made a bold move, trading for Clyde Drexler. That trade basically tore apart the original championship core for what felt like a gamble. Clyde, did you feel a bit rejected knowing some players were publicly upset about the deal? Yeah. There were a couple guys who weren't sure about it and definitely had questions. One guy who absolutely hated the trade was Vernon Maxwell. Not only was he vocal about it, but Drexler also played his exact position, instantly cutting into his minutes. For the rest of that season, the Rockets' locker room was clouded with drama. Though really, it was mostly one-sided. Maxwell was furious. while the rest of the team tried to keep moving forward. Eventually, he even got suspended due to yet another altercation, all while he sat and watched Clyde Drexler slide into the lineup without missing a beat. And look, Drexler didn't even do anything wrong, but just having him there drove Vernon Maxwell insane, so much that he flat out quit on the team. That's exactly what happened. In Game 1 of the 1995 playoffs, Maxwell logged only 16 minutes, scoring 3 points on 1-4-7 shooting. The crazy part? Rudy Tomjanovich actually trusted him to take the game-winning shot. Down 2, Rudy drew up a play for Maxwell, but since he hadn't played the whole fourth quarter, he was ice cold. When he bricked the shot, Maxwell felt like Rudy set him up to fail on purpose. Embarrassed and furious, he walked away from the team and never came back. The Rockets cut him, and Maxwell ended up watching from his couch as Drexler and Hakeem carried Houston to another championship. After Houston, he bounced around a few teams but never found stability again. Years later, Maxwell admitted he regretted leaving that way, mainly because of the money. As he put it, "I was getting ready to get paid a nice nice contract. And back then, $25 million was a huge deal. All Maxwell really had to do was swallow his pride and sit behind Clyde Drexler. But because he stormed out and abandoned his team, he threw that money away. That $25 million would have been double his entire career earnings. Instead of cashing in, his career unraveled and he missed out on a massive payday. You could argue Drexler didn't intentionally ruin Maxwell's career, but indirectly he did by taking his spot, his role, and ultimately his pride. Anyway, those were 5 NBA players whose careers got wrecked by a single teammate. Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Did we miss anyone else who fits this category? Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think below. And of course, as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.